Welcome to Aliens with JW, the podcast where aliens have conversations with humans. Today's episode is with Varun Gupta, the CEO of Manga Mavericks, a publisher working with creators to bring their stories to the world. Varun, welcome to the show.
Hey there, JW. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to come on my show. I really appreciate it. By the way, congratulations on publishing your first mangas. All your stories are super amazing, by the way. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of hard work and a lot of sleepless nights, but we made it to the finish line. And yeah, our first three books are out for Manga Mavericks books, and we're super proud of them.
Yes, I would say Bond really touched home to me because it brought me back to my childhood roots. Alternative brought me back to I've always wanted to be a musician, and I just never done it, so that really hit home for me. And the other one about being a foreman, like I want to be a firefighter and work in construction, so but also be a demon because I'm from Louisiana. So all those stories hit home for me. So I just want to say, your selection was super amazing, by the way.
Mm. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. So let's start at the beginning. What inspired you to create your company?
Oh, so that's a long story. So many years ago, around 2016, Manga Mavericks first started as a podcast. The original founders were my sibling Siddharth and our friend Colton. And they kind of wanted to initially create a podcast that was focused on covering the manga industry rather than just manga series themselves, and kind of highlighting the people behind like manga, like for instance, like localization, editors, publishers, rather than just like the series themselves. Um, so they started doing that, and it was a very surprising success. We were able to bring on a lot of very established people that were working on manga, specifically in the localization space, and working on like major titles for like Viz and Kodansha and other manga publishers. And it kind of escalated to a point where we eventually took over the website that we were being hosted on. Initially, Manga Mavericks, the podcast, was on all-comic.com. And at one point around early 2020, 2021, we decided, hey, how about the entire site just gets rebranded to mangamavericks.com, and like we just kind of focus on also doing manga related news, manga interviews. So kind of covering the manga industry became our entire brand in a way. Where I kind of got brought into the pictures early on, I was brought in as a guest on a lot of the podcasts. And then eventually I would help out on just like occasionally being on the podcast and also writing articles for the site. And it eventually led to me buying the website and the company as a whole from our previous owner, and me becoming like kind of the primary owner and CEO of the company. Um, and this kind of reached a point where like I was really thinking about, okay, what can Manga Mavericks do further beyond just podcast and news? Um, and when I was discussing it with both Siddharth and Colton, as well as one of our other frequent collaborators, Michael Joko, who has a lot of like positive reputation covering the Japanese side of the manga industry, and as well as like manga translations and manga interviews. Um, we thought about what if we tried to bring over the manga that we want to see brought over, bringing over the more underground authors or kind of types of stories that you don't often see being brought over by major publishers. Um, and when we were after talking to a lot of people that were already in the industry, and kind of our own like loop and network of localization experts that we knew, we kind of reached the conclusion that it was fairly feasible for us to kind of launch a publisher. Um, so that kind of led to us doing this whole manga publishing initiative and really kind of building out Manga Mavericks as not just an organization for like journalism media, but a full fledged company that is focused on multimedia content.
Well, that is super cool. Especially the part about the siblings, because that reminds me of my own podcast. The original idea for my podcast was I was going to interview my siblings, and we all were going to be different aliens. And then I was going to be interviewing them as my siblings, and we were going to be different, playing different characters. It wound up being not my siblings, it wound up just being me as the only alien. But that's how my podcast kind of started. So I really love the part about the sibling part of the family oriented aspects as well. Um, leads to my next question. How did your own journey shape your passion for manga
How did my what journey?
or your own journey in life?
Oh, see, I feel like I took a very indirect path to manga. Growing up, I was always like really into manga. I think around when I was like 6 years old, I read like a copy of Dragon Ball as well as like a random floppy of Pokemon Adventures, like the manga of that. And I just really loved those. And when I kind of like was around, I think 13 years old, 14 years old, my brother and I started like collecting manga in bulk. Like we would go on like eBay and all these like secondhand websites and like get all these like big manga lots that were there of like these completed series and just like collect them. Whether it was kind of a series that we just really liked, a series that was like out of print. And it reached the point where we eventually had like 1,000 plus volumes of manga before I went to college. Um, and that's also kind of what got me more connected to the manga community in a way. Because like we were actively collecting so much manga, we'd post about it on like Twitter and other places, and people would be like, "Oh, cool, you're a manga collector. I love manga too." And you'd kind of just like meet a lot of like other manga lovers and members of the community that way. And that kind of like worked in well to our eventual goals with our podcast because through that we found a lot of people that were already working in the manga industry, and we were able to bring them on to podcasts and interview them and build those kind of like established connections. Um, so a lot of it just came down to pure luck. It wasn't really anything that I actively sought out to, I guess, get involved in, but it kind of just worked out that way.
Oh, that's super cool. Like same like in my life and my career, it just kind of like just fell in that way. It's like I just started drawing. I started collecting comic books. Like one of the first Conan the Barbarian comic books that ever existed. I had that one of the first Batmans, and I just started collecting as well. I have a sad story. I bought my stuff to school, and the garbage company they drew all my books away by mistake. I had at the bus stop, so that was one of the saddest moments of my collecting story.
Dang, no, that's heartbreaking. Like, I get sad when like one of my books gets damaged. I mean, as you can see in the background, that's just a portion of my manga collection. But like, I cherish like so many of those books. I love, I like to this day, even though my collection's getting way too big, I still love collecting comics and manga.
And I would say, because I know from your passion of manga, how do you decide which stories that you want to publish?
So right now, our process at Manga Mavericks books is fairly straightforward in that either me or my co-founder Michael will look through a series in Japanese, or go to like an event like Comic Head or Comedia, these independent comic events in Japan, and we review all these different titles that are being released by artists there, kind of like you're reviewing like portfolios. And then we kind of single out a few series that we think are interesting, have an interesting story to tell, and that we think could work well in the English market. And then we try to figure out, okay, who of these people could we easily reach out to? And after we reach out to them, we try to see if like they're interested in working with us. One of the things that kind of separates Manga Mavericks books right now from other publishers is that for the majority of our titles, we are working directly with the Japanese manga creators. While say like if you're a larger company like a Viz or a Kodansha, they're working with Japanese publishers. So in many ways, we are kind of a Japanese creator's first exposure to the English market, and then we're also kind of serving as a representative for them in the international market. Many of our creators have never really thought about getting their works released in English, or if they have thought about, they haven't done it before. So while we're going through the process with them, we're also educating them on like what the English market is like, how the localization process will go for bring over their book, what other opportunities there are beyond just releasing the manga, like merchandising opportunities and beyond for your work. Um, so we're very much taking a pretty hands-on approach. Granted, we are still a very small company. Our staff right now is around 10 people plus a large amount of freelancers, but everyone is part-time. We technically don't have anyone that is like a full-time employee. So we kind of are balancing, okay, what are these interesting stories that we want to bring over, and do we have the resources, capacity, and time to localize and print these stories while also giving these creators the release that they deserve?
Yeah. And I think about that, like, what has been some of the biggest challenges that you've like noticed in bringing these stories to the world?
Some of the biggest challenges have been one, establishing us as a publisher after just years of being a journalism and kind of podcast outlet. Um, I'd say one of the advantages that because of this is because we already have an established brand. It's not like we're just an unknown company reaching out to an artist, but we still have to prove to both the artist and to basically the general public that we are a company that is capable of doing manga localization. Thankfully, we've had a lot of very great people come on to help us out with our projects. One of our main localization directors, Victoria Esnard, has worked with a lot of established artists in Japan in a localization capacity before. So she was able to advise us on kind of best practices on localization. And then also we know a lot of people that are working on major localization productions for manga, for major US publishers already. So when we asked them to come on for our projects, they were more than willing. Um, but basically, we just kind of had to explain all this to these artists when we're initially negotiating with them. And then when it came to actually announcing our titles, we got a generally like very positive reception. But then the other thing was like conveying to customers that we're still a small company. Um, we're not going to be in every bookstore right away. A lot of our orders are either directly B2B or B2C without a distributor right now. We're looking to get wider distribution down the line, but kind of in our initial year, the main goal is kind of showing that we have a proof of concept to be able to prove to like a bigger company like a distributor that we have the output and then also the kind of business acumen to be a publisher.
Right. And like in regards to being a publisher, what have you learned about yourself throughout the process of bringing these stories to the world?
Actually, could you repeat that?
Like in regards to like publishing these works, what did you learn about yourself and bring these stories to the world?
Ooh, what did I learn about myself? I think what I learned about myself is that I am very good at kind of realizing what needs to get done in what amount of time. Um, in that we had to basically localize our three launch books within the span of about 4 months. And that involved like basically kind of pushing against a lot of deadlines and making sure, okay, these X things need to get translated. We need to get files prepared. We need to build up our team. We need to market everything. We need to make sure the books are printed. And a lot of that initial duty kind of fell on me as well as like a small select number of people on our team. But then like organizing ourselves and really making sure that we were all communicating to ensure that these products reach the finish line in the right amount of time was like kind of a big undertaking. And I think that was one thing I was unsure about when we initially started is like, yeah, we have all the assets to make this happen, but can we actually stick to the work schedule and get it done? And I think the fact that we got our books out within 4 months, which is not common for a manga publisher at all, um, was I think a very big boost to my own confidence that I have a decent grasp of what I'm doing in this space.
Yeah, look, basically my next question, what would be some advice or wisdom you wish someone would have shared with you about creating a company that publishes manga?
I'd say the biggest thing is don't overthink it. In that I think a lot of people think that there is a bunch of hoops you have to jump through to really start a business, especially in the manga space. But what it really comes down to is just leaving a positive impression on people and building the needed connections. A lot of what we were able to do as a company starting out is because we got advice from people that were already within the manga industry. And those connections were made over a good 10 years or 9 to 10 years. So it's not like you're going to immediately be able to just start a company from nothing, but don't be afraid to take a leap and do something that you're passionate about. Because if like people see your passion for it and you have the acumen to back it up or the basically the support system to back it up, I think a lot of people will want to believe in you.
And in believing in yourself, how do you handle self-doubt or the inner critic in putting your products out into the world?
See, this is the tough one because I feel like I am my harshest critic in a way. Um, but I think what I've kind of thought about is having the people closest to me also give their opinion on our products before we bring it out to the world, but also realizing that if I am happy with the final product, I should have the confidence that the customers will see what I see in this product. And I think that is especially personal to me for our three launch titles, Bond's Alternative and Zigoku's Foreman, because all three of those were personally selected by me. Um, so their success or failure in a way kind of feels very tied to my own choices. Um, but I think the flip side to that too is that I know why I chose them. I knew they all three of them had very distinct voices and stories that would be interesting to bring to the English market. And thankfully customers so far have felt the same way. So in a way that's been validating to really see that positive reception carry through. But I think that's something that's very important to keep in mind is like you if you want someone to buy your product and like your product, you need to also believe in that product.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like right now, I'm dressed as an alien, and I'm like, I have to believe in what I'm doing. I have to believe that what I'm bringing out into the world is meaningful to me, and those that will get it will like it. And so far, for me, the people that have been getting good reviews as well. So I totally agree with you on that as well. For this last part, I'm going to ask you some random questions and say the first thing that comes to you. If Manga Maverick was a superhero, what would its symbol mean?
Ooh, that's tough. I'm trying to think. Um, I guess like the symbol for me would be hmm. I guess our symbol would mean unity. And I think like I would stick with the M that we currently use for Manga Mavericks. Um, and I guess like the reason I say unity is that our company is was brought up on the foundation of bringing people together to talk about this medium that we love, manga. And even now at its current stage, so much of the work that goes into it is from the passion and unity that we've gained from just this general love of the medium and of the work that manga creators do. And we really want to just push that out into the world. So yeah, I think unity is kind of the good, apt meaning for our symbol.
That's cool. I like it. If you can publish any manga, past, present, or future, what would it be?
Ooh, that's tough. I don't know if I can name a specific title, but there is a lot of classic manga that I really want to see brought over into English. And I think that would be one of my goals is to, excuse me, to bring over more of these classic series to the English market. Because you have a lot of like classic titles being brought over in the anime space. There's a lot of amazing companies like Anime Ego and Discotech that are bringing over classic anime. But the classic manga, for a multitude of reasons, is much tougher to do in some regards. But I'd really love to have the resources and the time to kind of spend bringing over more of these classic series that deserve more love.
Right. I'm a big fan of the classics. So like when you said that you can't see it, but right now I'm like smiling from ear to ear underneath the mask.
Oh, that's awesome.
If Manga Maverick could speak, what would it say?
Hmm. I don't know. Maybe buy my books.
Why does Manga Maverick love manga?
Ooh. Why does the company love manga?
Yeah,
I guess because it's built on the foundation of talking about manga. Um, we've been Manga Mavericks has been focused on manga for basically 10 years at this point. And we wouldn't be talking about it and kind of promoting it if we didn't love it. And I think like what manga really brings to the table is just these wide variety of unique voices that are like you don't normally see in like every like facet of like other industries. Like I think there is the amount of output that for one thing that manga has in Japan is incredible. We only get about 2% of the manga that get released in Japan. Um but that's also just like I think further kind of proof of just how many different stories and voices are out there. And I think like because there's just this vast abyss of stories in manga, it just becomes this like treasure trove of like experiences for people. There's literally a manga out there for everyone. There's a manga for every genre, no matter how niche. Um, and I think that that is just something that's really beautiful.
yeah, I really enjoyed it because I feel like I agree with you. That's a story for everybody out there. What is one thing about Manga Maverick you wish people knew?
Hmm. I'm not sure. I feel like I've been pretty transparent about what Manga Mavericks does. I guess like I guess one thing would be like Manga Mavericks very is a very like passion project type business in that like I said before, we don't really have any full-time employees. Everyone is like part-time or freelance. So it very much is a labor of love. We have like a pretty high output of content and we get a lot of big interviews on the news and podcast side. But a lot of that has just come from persistence and hard work um outside of our day jobs. Um for many years there was like no money like in terms of like what we got out of Manga Mavericks. We were just kind of paying costs out of pocket and just doing it because we love it. And for I think a lot of like like companies and organizations that start out similar to us, that the reality is like pretty similar in that it's something like this is something you do that because you love it rather than something you do for money. Um, and I I think it's like very admirable when I see anyone doing anime or manga journalism because like the amount of work that goes into it is like very tough. Sometimes it's very thankless work too. And like the amount of effort that goes into even getting interviews sometimes with like a Japanese guest or an artist is a ton of work behind the scenes. Um, so I think that's something I want to convey is that it's a lot of hard work, but it's a labor of love.
I totally agree with that. I think in being an artist myself, it's you do it for the love, and at some point the profits come. But if the profits don't come, you still love what you do.
Exactly.
Mm. Last question: is there anything you would like to share before we end the show?
Um, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know when this podcast is going to come out exactly, but Manga Mavericks is going to be at Otakon the weekend of August 8th to August 10th. And we're going to be having a panel there with a few new manga license announcements. Um, so we're really excited to kind of share with people our new manga licenses, and we hope people get interested in buying one of our books and checking out these amazing stories that we're bringing out.
Oh, well, that's amazing! Congratulations on everything as well. I want to say, so that's a wrap for today's show. Huge thank you for Varun Gupta for taking the time to come on my show. If you like the conversation, feel free to share the story with a friend or a loved one. Until next time on Aliens with JW, the podcast where aliens have conversations with humans.